thrive in those open spaces as well. So we'll see what compositions these players opt to go for and how they play those compositions for the map and the areas of the map. It should be a very interesting dance, as both of these players are incredibly capable.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we are going to be starting over here in the top left-hand side of the map, Lightshade. On top of that beautiful blue Protoss player representing Team Big, he is ShoWTimE.
And also beautiful, on the bottom right-hand side of the map, it is Big Gabriel, HeRoMaRinE.
But Big Gabriel is he's just a, Big Gabe. He's not on Team Big.
That is true, yeah. Big miss there for Team Big, but he has been in mouse ports for a long time. Mouse ports, I mean, they have been around for a very long time, and I think that maybe HeRoMaRinE is one of their earliest, if not their earliest acquisition ever at this point, right? Like, at least as far as like what the rosters in any game are concerned, I don't know that they've kept any player for as long as they have Gabe.
He joined it, I think, in 2011. He might actually have one of the longest standing teams in StarCraft. Like, he actually might be at least on one of the top 10 lists of player that's been on a team for the longest amount of time.
Yeah, he has to be. All right, so this should be pretty interesting because most of the people have even retired from there, right? Like, it's it would be very difficult. Yeah, I don't know. He might be uncontested on that.
I know one player who outlives it though, Paulo.
Who?
It's you. You've been on Root longer than anyone.
See, that's where my thought came to, but I was like, yeah, but do I count as a player anymore? I'm not sure that I do. And I was in Complexity for a year. There was a gap year where I went to Complexity. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think even then, Big Gabe would outdo me. I'm not sure. It would be close.
Oh, man. I mean, that just goes to show you how big Gabe's history is. Well, history is definitely something that both these players have behind them as they've been around for a while. But we do actually see this cheeky SCV over here in this bottom left-hand side, waiting for that factory finish up to plop down what I have to imagine is going to be a starport for a little proxy shenanigans over here. This is not necessarily like this starport isn't all in. He's proxying and has to end the game. This is I'm going to build probably a very fast either medevac it may be like, or sometimes a liberator follow-up and try and get some damage done.
Oh, beautiful moves from both players. From Big Gabe to finish the bunker, and from ShoWTimE to identify that Big Gabe wants to finish his command center. So he actually lets the Adept kind of lag behind a little bit longer, and it gets a delay onto the low ground CC. At the same time, yeah, this proxy is pretty cool from my perspective, mostly because it's a HeRoMaRinE proxy, which we don't get to see every day.
Yeah, the medevac going to be able to load up a handful of those Hellions. He only has 2 out right now. I think the 3rd Hellion just popped and is making its way over. The 4th Hellion a little bit delayed as well. So I think that there's going to be an opportunity for HeRoMaRinE to maybe poke forward, but ShoWTimE, having gotten the Adept so far forward, saw the reactor on the factory, should have some idea that this is going to be a possibility. He's already kind of walled off that front, but he's making more sentries and instead of like making a lot of stalkers or Adepts. So now he's going to need to start using some of those warpins to get units to deal with the Hellion drop potential.
Yeah, and this was beautiful from ShoWTimE because he was actually following the one Hellion in the back there with his hallucinated Phoenix the entire way. So at the start, Big Gabe started going towards the left, which signaled to ShoWTimE probably the position of that starport, and he managed to put his units all at the natural accordingly. Because, if you look at the starport position, it has to pretty much go to the natural. Otherwise, you would have positioned it north, right? So very good moves from both players, but mostly from ShoWTimE. They're identifying the route, and now Big Gabe's still trying to find an opening, and he might just have it. There is a little bit of a clump of probes here, but not too much is gonna come of it. 3 kills.
Yeah, still looking for some more, maybe in the natural. There's a Warpin of an Adept and a Stalker, though, that are going to push back that medevac, and Big Gabe has to get out of there. He's going to be able to spot out a 3rd base, but not a whole lot these Hellions can do about it. So they'll unload, they'll maneuver around the map a little bit, but looks like that wall for ShoWTimE is just a little bit too high for Big Gabe to step over.
That is absurd. Actually, in chat, someone just pointed out in retrospect, but HeRoMaRinE joined Mouse Sports when he was 14 years old.
we like to talk about young players and Rainer and Clem and oh my god how much they've done, but yeah, imagine joining your team when you were 14 years old and you're just still going strong with them. It's no longer a team, that's a family, cats.
It really is. Very cool.
Most definitely. Well, I think at this point, HeRoMaRinE, his proxy starport did not really do as much as he was hoping to, and there are some downsides to that. That means that the medevac staying alive is going to be very important because that's the only medevac he's going to have for a little bit. He had to fly that starport all the way back home. He then has to start a much later reactor. It's still finishing on up, so HeRoMaRinE is going to be kind of pulled back for a bit, and I think ShoWTimE is doing a great job kind of exploiting that. He's powering up on his gateways now. He's getting up his tech. He's actually getting up a warp prism to just say, hey, as soon as you finally do have the ability to start doing those move outs of your own, I'm going to be keeping you at home with my warp prism. And I really like that.
Yeah, it should be pretty effective here, especially seeing as he has a third, whereas Big Gabe has not started his third yet. And that is a little bit concerning as he's going to be getting ready to move out, but ShoWTimE didn't really get too greedy here, I feel like. So as long as he spots this, he should be able to get in a couple of warp pins before the attack fully hits, or pull back the army with this warp prism.
This is going to turn into a bit of an awkward situation because HeRoMaRinE, moving out so much earlier before his extra 2 medevacs popped out so that they can just kind of boost and meet him in the center means that he's going to be out of position for this kind of warp prism harassment. But ShoWTimE also having to deal with the Hellions in the main base.
Yeah, this is getting chaotic. Like you said, Zealots of all things are gonna be dropped in the mineral line, and they are gonna shred through these SCVs, much like the Hellions on the other side. This is gonna be go time on the other side of the map for Big Gabe, who's gonna get to situate his tanks and his mines accordingly as well. But charge lots, we were talking about this. Charge lots are so good defensively. The mine goes off on a lot of them, but not before all of the bio is depleted, or most of it at least. And now I think ShoWTimE is gonna get an easy clean off.
Yeah, Immortal getting totally focus fire down by those siege tanks. It does end up falling, but the rest of the Bioforce ends up falling. Those Zealots still going ham inside the main base. ShoWTimE comes back in as he realizes, actually, yeah, I can offensively warp in now. He's continuing to pick away at some of those SCVs, distracting a lot of the mining. And during this, HeRoMaRiNE's army in the center is actually just kind of chilling right now. He finally loads them up into the medevacs and looks like he's going to go for a drop to the main base. But this has also just been a big distraction. It's bought ShoWTimE even more time for more warpins in the main base to get more of a defensive position.
Yeah, and it's in situations like this that you really want to have the likes of Zealots on your side. As I say that, a lot of them barely dodge a Widowmine shot to stay alive. But yeah, the cool thing about Zealots here on offense on the warpins is that no shade here, Ravi, but Zealots really don't need much microing, right? Like you kind of just warp them in and they do their thing. Whereas all of these Terran units or the counter offense, like would say the Hellions, they need to be babysat. So so I like this position for ShoWTimE, and I think as a result of all these little altercations where they had to split their attention, he is coming out on top, and it's a GG.
Well played. Both the defense and the offense coming out over there from ShoWTimE, and that nets him a solid victory there. I also even want to just compliment ShoWTimE on just in those situations where it looks a little bit iffy. It sometimes feels like a bit of a risk where you're like, okay, my stalkers will target the medevacs. Because sometimes you go for that and those marauders just kind of tear your stalkers to pieces. They kind of start to charge on forward, but ShoWTimE doing a great identification saying, no, I got the cleanup over here. I also know whether I need to warp in back at home more units to defend appropriately, or if I can warp in offensively, micromanaging basically how much exactly he needed to barely defend back at home while still being able to maintain the offense. A lot of really, really small decisions being made in a short period of time there for both players.
Yes, indeed. And I think one decision that HeRoMaRinE would have preferred to make perhaps a little bit earlier was to move on forward with his army, right? Like it seemed like the Zealots, the warp prism really caught him off guard, but it took him a while to get situated. And when he did get situated, he did it between the two bases of ShoWTimE, which is also not ideal. I think he should have just gone south and sieged the third. If you kill that third, you're still in a good position. If you are in the middle of the natural and the third, then you're gonna get flanked from both sides potentially, and that's a little bit more dangerous. Took him a little bit there to set up. Difficult to blame him again because, you know, Zealots, you basically just warp him in, Ravi.
Yeah, and we had a lot of zealots actually. That's one thing that I really do like about having that charge loss, like you were saying, on the defense, because it allows you to focus your attention other places, but forces your opponent to, the Bioforce has to do that stutter step micro back to trade effectively. You have to make sure that your siege shanks are focus firing down the immortals and doing all these other things, but you can focus your attention on your other units during that time. It's a nice way to buy space, time, and also a little bit of extra APM over your opponent.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, exactly. You buy a little bit more attention on your side of things. Offensively, the Zealots were also amazing. Defensively, if anything, you have to be a little bit careful, at least of those Widow Mines, or of when you take your engagement. It becomes more of a positional thing, kind of like Zerg armies are controlled, which they're also not very controlled usually, right? Like the control in a lot of these type of fights with Zealots or with a lot of the Zerg armies is just positioning, like where you're coming from, when you're coming from, and making it so that your opponent doesn't get to micro as much as they want to. Either way, it's going to be a win for ShoWTimE in that first game, as we expected. And now, for the second one, we expect, if the script is written in the stars, that this guy at the top right-hand side of the map should take it. It's HeRoMaRinE for Mouse.
And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, from Berlin International Gaming, aka Big, he is ShoWTimE.
Yeah. And as much as I am trash talking the unit Zealot, he did so many things right. I mean, just the start of that, he did not take any damage. That was all to his credit. The hallucination following the Hellion, it didn't see the medevac that it was going towards. It just noticed like which way it was going, deducts from that there's a starport, positions his army and his units perfectly. I mean, this man is really the complete package as far as Protoss is concerned.
Yeah, I think that you did a great job of kind of identifying and talking about how these small little things of his army movement, based on the information he had from the hallucinating Phoenix and stuff, is so important, because the reason why we call ShoWTimE the wall and not the wall that has a gap, he's not like Helm's Deep, right? There's not like some random flow of water that you can just explode and, oh man, now I find all the damage here, because that is all that HeRoMaRinE needs in that situation, to try and find the little opening. He needs one little crack in the wall, and he can start pushing on in, finding lots of damage here and there. But ShoWTimE is so good at consistently having his units in position, having the information about where his opponent might be hitting and everything, and just having a really good game sense sometimes. Like, I don't even know how he always seems to have a perfect read on where his opponent's going to be trying to hit him in from, because he just is always so prepared. It's really always impressive to watch. And I think Cats, I don't know if you remember, a lot of the events that we were doing in the Ukraine and stuff, we had some of them actually have the Toby eye trackers. And I feel like that was a really enlightening moment for me, because I was like, how does ShoWTimE do it? And when we watched his vision of how he plays StarCraft, he is looking at the minimap. He is darting his eyes around 10 times more than it feels like all the other players were.
Yeah, he definitely is. And that's the magic of having Zealots. Kappa!
Well put. Well played.
All right. So let's see what happens here. As Big Gabe this time around, he's not really going to be proxying anything for starters. I think he's also going to revert to his comfort zone, which is that macro play. Obviously, it was a macro-ish opening, but I will be very surprised if he doesn't try to take an earlier third command center this time and play a little bit more defensive himself.
Yeah, I think that that would definitely be kind of encouraging to see, because I think HeRoMaRinE, he has a really strong late game, right? That is one of the really scary things about HeRoMaRinE, is I think he is the kind of player who is not a Terran that says, oh, I can't win versus Protoss in the late game. I have to do some early push to end it now. Like he actually actively takes on the later stages of PvP.
Yeah, most definitely. He is a beast. And this is another trait of ShoWTimE, right? He will always prioritize that information that you were talking about. Look at that hallucinated Phoenix. It's just patrolling and doing all sorts of things. And oh man, I'd be terrified. It's like I'm watching you. It's almost saying, you know, like there was no need for that little patrol there. But ShoWTimE's gonna do it anyway. This Adept will die, sadly.
Yeah, nice pick off there for HeRoMaRinE. Keeps all of his Hellions alive as well, which is just going to be kind of an annoying threat with the medevac now over here paired up. And ooh, ShoWTimE finally losing a little bit of vision of the medevac and the Hellion potential over here. Gets caught off guard. A handful of these probes getting roasted and toasted. Even the sentry might actually end up taking some damage here.
Yeah, I'm almost surprised that there wasn't a force shield there to protect the probes towards the end, but a lot of those probes actually surviving one hit from dying, so it could have been a little bit worse. It's 5 dead, but at the cost of those Hellions, at the cost of 3 Hellions, and you know, the last one is barely alive, so not too bad all in all for ShoWTimE.
Yeah, I'm actually really impressed with how well that split ended up working out there at the last second. But, well, behind this, of course, Big Gabe is not doing any kind of super dedicated pressure with that, and he's kept the medevac alive as well. He's got his extra barracks finishing on up. He's got his stim on the way, and his medevac at home, safe and sound, building that reactor to get up some medevacs of his own.
Should be legit, as Blink is also about to finish. Additional gateways being added. And a warp prism, so a very similar game plan from ShoWTimE as the previous game. He is going to be producing additional probes, though he hasn't started production of probes at his third. I wonder if it is hotkeyed. Yeah, the third now starts producing probes as well. He has good information with an observer, and Big Gabe, surprisingly, at least to me, has not yet taken his own third command center.
Yeah, hasn't taken his own third command center, and he's not going for like the multi-tank setup like he did in that last game, so that means he's probably not doing a similar push as the last game. He is going and keeping that reactor on the factory. He's producing a handful more of these Widow Mines, and he's going to be facing off against this Warp Prism harassment of the Blink Stalkers, poking up to the high ground. HeRoMaRinE is kind of set up in the main base, or with some units, but the Siege Tank is not really in range of a lot of this.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful move from ShoWTimE, who kind of takes the initiative this time around. So similar to what HeRoMaRinE attempted at the previous game, this time around ShoWTimE is working at an economic deficit. Yes, he did take the third, but he hadn't started probing up until just now, or up until just recently. He's only at 42 probes, so he really needs to do some more damage here.
Yeah, I mean, some really fancy micro coming out over here from ShoWTimE. He's going to end up losing quite a few Stalkers in exchange, and that's just a bit too much. GG, HeRoMaRinE ties up that series with a solid defense.
Yeah, very solid defense. I mean, the mind game there for ShoWTimE, it didn't quite work. I think he was hoping that HeRoMaRinE read into that third base, and maybe that he did what I was proposing he should do, take a third, and you know, or a third. And if HeRoMaRinE had done what I would have done, or what I would have liked for him to do, he might have just died, because ShoWTimE was pretty all in there. We're gonna go to a quick break, and when we get back, the decider match. We are back with one of the classic matches of this German derby here, as we have the best Protoss in Germany going up against the best Terran in Germany, and they happen to be two of the best players in the world as well. I am joined by Robbie, Fear Dragon. What's up? Are we gonna see our predictions come to fruition here?
Well, I mean, we're going to find out because we're heading to a game 3. I feel like all of us ended up predicting a 2-1 of some sort. So we're at least going to be right about that. And it has been a strange series so far. I feel like even though it's tied up 1-1, the games have been a little bit more one-sided than I thought they would be.
Yeah, and maybe not strangely as it plays to both players' reputations, but whoever's getting a little bit aggressive, a little bit kind of breaking the norm of their reputation as a defensive macro player has lost their game. So we'll see if both of them revert to their comfort zone this time around, take their thirds, make their probes, their SCVs, and we get a long brawl.
Well, we are going to be starting down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map. On top of that red Terran player from Mouse Sports, he is HeRoMaRinE.
And in the top right-hand side, the blue Protoss player from Big, it is ShoWTimE.
Alrighty, so Cats, I mean, do you have a prediction? It sounds like your prediction is that they're both going to maybe take a step back from doing the hyper aggressive stuff and kind of chill out a little bit, play a little bit more macro oriented.
Yeah, I think so. I think both of them on aggression have not done as well as they would in the longer matches. So.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and I actually would be thrilled if that prediction came to light as well. But at the same time, I don't hate little pokes and prods. I like the kind of uncommitted pressures and stuff that we were even seeing a little bit with, like, say, the Hellion drop or things like that, or, you know, a War Prism that didn't necessarily need to end the game, but, you know, sees an opportunity and tries to get a bit done.
Yeah, there has been a pattern from Big Gabe over the last 2 games that he has gone for 2 base. I don't think we've seen a third drop yet. So I wonder if he's looking once again for a 2 base timing to start things off and try to do damage and play it from there as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, as we have our first Adept starting on up, I did get a little bit of a glance at that one probe. Maybe it's just coming back in for another scout. And yeah, it does look like it is gonna be doing exactly that. Just keeping an eye out on Big Gabe. Sees, all right, you're building your bunker. If you watch Pure Legacy versus Peely Peely, you'll know how important those bunkers can be potentially in a PvT. But
was that like 11 Marines that died to 2 Stalkers?
Yeah, 11 Marines. You know, a little bit harder to make that kind of damage happen on a map that has a high ground natural, but yeah, bunkers can be pretty important sometimes.
Yeah, most definitely. But like you pointed out, if you're going to skip it on any map, it should be a map with a ramp leading to it because of the vision that it denies. So your units are a little bit more committed, which is part of why you almost always see Adepts from the Proto side of things on this map, because then the Shade can go through that ramp without, without getting shot at.
Yep, we already see that ShoWTimE is beginning his Twilight Council, but also starting up the semblances of a wall, because one consistent thing we've definitely been seeing from HeRoMaRinE is not just the 2-base kind of plays, but also he's been opening up with the Hellions a lot, and specifically Medevac Hellions, whether it be, 4 Hellions popping out immediately at the same time as a proxied Medevac, or even just the at-home Medevac. This is a pretty consistent thing that not only has been happening, but looks like ShoWTimE is going to have a decent scout on as well.
Yeah, and he loves patrolling the Phoenix over as well, it seems like. But yeah, he's always been having this same hallucination timing. So I think Big Gabe at this point should be expecting it. I'm not sure that there's much adaptation that can be done to account for it, though.
Ooh, it's going to actually be the Marines loaded up this time. The Hellions just going to be poking in at the front, and that's going to be the purpose that this wall serves over here for ShoWTimE. Hellions actually leaving the 3rd base location right as the probe moves on forward, but might actually catch wind of it with the other 2 Hellions. No, doesn't catch wind of it. He's just going to be poking it at the front. And frankly, there's not a whole lot here for ShoWTimE, but that shield battery is finishing up just in the nick of time.
Yeah, and that's going to help a lot. If he has an overcharge available, then that's pretty much going to be that for any attack at this stage in the game. 4 minutes in, I mean, I think 1 Stalker will be just about any number of units that you can bring if it has an overcharged shield battery. So HeRoMaRiNE is going to try to poke at the back, but it's not going to work out, and ShoWTimE confidently taking a third.
Yep, that probe able to stay nice and hidden over there at the north side of that third base, so it's able to just drop that down without even having to wait to see if all these other units have fully backed off. But HeRoMaRiNE returns back home with his Marines saying, all right, I didn't lose anything, so honestly, at the end of the day, it didn't go too poorly, but he'll continue to kind of poke and prod with those Hellions, and he will scout out that third base location.
Yeah, there's a Banshee in the making, and I absolutely love, as a result of the Banshee, I was prompted to look at the setup that ShoWTimE has at his main and his natural as far as shield batteries are concerned, because that's really relevant against one single Banshee. And I am very pleased to see that, you know, for example, the shield battery at the natural, it's so beautiful because it actually accounts for both the entrance and the mineral line at the same time, right? Like, and that's the kind of thing that you really want to do. Obviously, it's not going to cover the entire mineral line, so ShoWTimE will still have to look for the Banshee at the left of that natural base. But all in all, he seems pretty well set up. The observer is going to give him a heads up about this drop as well, but it will allow at the very least for Big Gabe to move out on the map.
Yeah, well, Medevac not doing so hot over there, and the Hellions also getting taken out pretty quickly. But like you were saying, it's about this attack on this left-hand side, and ShoWTimE might just be doing a full-on evacuation over here. Sentries have a little bit of energy, but oh man, one of the sentries that had energy does get taken out. Immortal not quite popped over here. This is a really big danger zone over here for ShoWTimE. He has a couple of slow cells rallying on forward, but nothing to take care of these siege tanks in time, especially with the repair coming out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, not all the Stalkers firing at once, so a little bit of a miscalculation as a result from ShoWTimE. The battery actually is not close enough, but the Immortal doesn't go out, just barely. And that might just be enough for Big Gabe to continue on his push. An extra Immortal might have done the difference here, Ravi, but it's looking very difficult, and ShoWTimE will pop out, I was gonna say, but yeah, he'll pop out of existence as far as this map is